The day the neighborhood changed. A story of reckoning, courage, and community. It was a golden afternoon, the kind that felt suspended in time. The sun hung low in the sky, washing the quiet suburban streets of Briarwood Hollow in a warm amber glow. Birds chirped softly in the distance. Leaves swayed gently with the breeze, and everything felt wrapped in a peaceful lull that only came at the close of a long summer day. Daniel Rhodes stood barefoot on the front porch of his craftsman-style home, watching his 5-year-old son, Aiden, roll his toy truck through the freshly cut grass. The boy's giggles fluttered across the yard like music. It was perfect, serene, safe, until it wasn't. The sound came first an engine growling low and then climbing into a guttural roar. At first, Daniel thought it was just a neighbor revving up an old Mustang or maybe someone returning from work with a modified truck. But the sound didn't fade. It grew louder, sharper, and then pierced the neighborhood's calm with brutal precision. Tires squealed. A blur of motion streaked past the corner of Daniel's eye. That's when he saw it. A black SUV, boldly marked with white lettering on the side. HOA Enforcement Patrol. It tore into the cul-de-sac like it was responding to a 5-alarm fire. The vehicle was doing at least 40 mph twice the neighborhood speed limit, and it was barreling straight toward the patch of grass where Aiden had been playing. Time slowed. Daniel's heart stopped. "Aiden!" he screamed, leaping down the steps. The child turned, eyes wide, but his young brain was still processing what the noise meant. For a terrifying half-second, he froze. Then instinct kicked in. Aiden dove sideways, tumbling across the lawn in a clumsy roll just as the SUV skidded inches past the spot he had been kneeling. The vehicle didn't stop, didn't slow. It kept moving, slamming to a halt only after crossing into another neighbor's driveway. Daniel's chest heaved with a mix of panic and rage. He sprinted across the lawn, scooped his son into his arms, and held him tight. Aiden was crying softly, more shaken than hurt, but Daniel could feel the tremble in his small body. That should have been the end of an accident, followed by a frantic apology, maybe even an ambulance or police intervention. But what Daniel saw when he looked up stunned him even more than the vehicle's recklessness. The two individuals who stepped out of the SUV weren't uniformed police. They wore matching polo shirts with the HOA logo and name badges clipped to their belts. One of them, stocky, mid-40s, buzz cut, began nonchalantly brushing dirt from his khakis like he'd just stepped off a golf course. The other leaned against the hood of the SUV, arms folded, chewing gum. No apology, no concern, not even acknowledgement. They had almost run over a child, and they acted like nothing had happened. Daniel's blood boiled. He set Aiden gently on the porch and marched across the yard, fists clenched. "You saw him," Daniel shouted, his voice shaking. "My son was right there. You drove through my yard like a damn battering ram. What the hell is wrong with you?" The man with the buzz cut raised an eyebrow, then muttered, "We had a report. A property violation. Speed was necessary." "Necessary?" Daniel repeated, his voice a mix of disbelief and fury. "You call nearly killing a 5-year-old necessary?" "Sir, please calm down," the second man chimed in lazily. "We're authorized by the HOA to respond quickly. We don't need permission to enter community property." Daniel stepped closer. "That's my yard, my private property, and you're going to tell me it's part of your jurisdiction?" The tension was electric, but as much as Daniel wanted to scream, to unleash every ounce of the rage that pulsed in his veins, he forced himself to stop. He looked back at his son, still trembling on the porch, and knew he had to do more than argue. He had to act. With deliberate calm, Daniel pulled out his phone. He called the local sheriff's office, not the HOA, not the community hotline. Real law enforcement. As he described what had happened, the speeding, the trespassing, the near tragedy involving his son, the dispatcher's tone shifted from polite indifference to concern. She promised to send a unit. And that, more than anything, reassured Daniel that this wasn't going to be swept under a rug. When the deputies arrived 20 minutes later, the HOA enforcers had retreated to their vehicle. One tried to defend their actions, claiming they were pursuing visual confirmation of an unapproved lawn ornament. Daniel couldn't believe his ears. All that risk, All that danger for a lawn ornament? He handed over a neighbor's Ring camera footage, which had captured the entire incident. The officers watched in stunned silence as the SUV sped into the yard, missing Aiden by inches. "That's not just reckless," one of the deputies said grimly. "That's criminal negligence." The HOA officers were questioned on the spot. Statements were taken. A formal complaint was filed. But Daniel didn't stop there. Over the next few days, he met with neighbors, some who had witnessed the incident, others who had their own horror stories. One recalled being threatened with fines over a cracked flower pot. Another shared how her teenage son was followed by an HOA vehicle for walking a dog off leash, even though the dog was inside a fenced yard. Something deeper was wrong. People had been too afraid to speak up, or too weary to challenge the small circle of HOA leadership that ruled with impunity. But Daniel's story was different. It was visceral. It involved a child, and it was backed by undeniable evidence. The news spread. Local media picked up the story. The video clip of the speeding SUV aired on the evening news. Public outrage followed. The HOA board scrambled to contain the damage. They issued a generic statement expressing concern, but offered no apology. They tried to spin the incident as a miscommunication. It didn't work. The city launched an investigation. The HOA's private enforcement contract was suspended. The two men involved were removed from their roles pending further review. Daniel stayed involved every step of the way. He attended hearings. He answered questions. He wrote letters. He didn't yell. He didn't rant. He showed up with facts, with calm resolve, and with the backing of a community that had finally found its voice. 3 weeks after the incident, the city issued its findings. The HOA patrol had acted outside their authority. Their vehicle's speed and behavior had posed an immediate and unjustifiable danger to residents. New regulations were issued. No HOA enforcement would be permitted to enter private property without consent. All complaints would require verification through official channels. And all enforcement personnel would undergo formal training and certification. But that wasn't the biggest victory. The biggest change came quietly through the people. Neighbors began talking. They started attending HOA meetings. They asked hard questions. They ran for board positions. And when Daniel was asked to lead a newly formed community oversight committee, he accepted, not because he sought power, but because he knew firsthand what silence could cost. Aiden never fully understood how close he came to danger. But he noticed how people in the neighborhood now waved more often, how his dad got stopped for quick thanks or handshakes. He saw signs appear on fences and mailboxes. "We support safe streets. We stand with Daniel." The yard where it happened became symbolic, a place where something ugly had sparked something powerful. Daniel still walked that yard every evening, watching his son play freely again. The sound of tires no longer sent panic through his chest. The silence had been replaced not just with laughter, but with vigilance. This wasn't just his win. It was everyone's. From one terrifying moment came something enduring. Accountability, change, and the quiet proof that one voice, standing firm in the face of reckless authority, could ripple outward and shift the direction of an entire community. And in that truth, Daniel found something even greater than justice. He found peace, and a promise he would keep forever. "Not on my street. Not to my child. Not ever again."